bhavatu Sahano bhunaktu Sahu birjang karvavahai Tejashina budhitamastu Ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Roy sir, can you please enable the screen share for me?
Now you are host, Shonam. So please start your program.
Okay. Hello, Ashmita. Today we are going to start with very important topics of the course, that is polygraph and narcoanalysis. We'll go through each and every step, and if you do not feel I have understood this step or there is some confusion, you can ask me then and there only, okay? So there is no limitation of asking. I'll share my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We are going to start with polygraph first. Polygraph, with the word itself, you can see like poly means many and graph means graph. So when we are going for polygraph, we know that this instrument will include the graph. And because there is a word poly, it means it's a cluster of many graphs. Polygraph is popularly known as lie detector. In normal term, we always say, okay, lie detection test is going to happen. This person is going to go through the lie detection and sometimes and referred to as psychophysiological detection, which means there is some perspective which involve the psychology of the person and there is some perspective which involve the physiology of the person. It is an instrument which measures and records physiological action of human body, which means when we are putting a person on this particular instrument, we are going to check some of the physiological action of the body. How we are going to check? We are going to give him some kind of question and we are trying to elicit some of the responses which are physiological measures. In those, the terms physiological measures we are using for blood pressure, pulse rate, respiratory rate, skin conductivity, while the subject is asked questions related to the crime and he answered them. Like, so it's not like we are measuring all the changes. There are some changes which we are measuring, which are majorly that the changes which occur when we try to lie. So in polygraph, what we are doing is we are trying to elicit the physiological changes that happens in a person's body when he is trying to lie. Because lying is usually accompanied by an increased heart rate. That is a scientifically proven fact that whenever there is a person who is trying to lie, or person where he feels that he is going to expose himself, or whenever he is trying to deceive or trying to lie, there is some kind of physiological change that happened that is already being proven. What are those changes? These are heart rate changes, blood pressure changes, which is measured by our cardiograph, and increased breathing rate happen. You sweat a lot whenever you try to lie. So that these changes occur whenever you try to lie, and these are all physiological changes which we are going to measure through polygraph instrument. The polygraph test measure all the natural changes caused by autonomic nervous system during questioning. So it means some of the questioning techniques are also going to inculcate in this particular test. Just like BIOS, we question. Initially in BIOS, the person does not have to say anything. But in polygraph, for you to check the major changes, the person has to respond. The autonomic nervous system changes are beyond reasonable control of an individual, because you can't control your physiological changes, right? If you are going to sweat, you are going to sweat. You can't control your sweating rate. If you are going to breathe, you can't control your breathing pattern. You can't control your blood pressure. You can't control your heart rate. So these are the autonomic nervous changes which are beyond our control, which we are going to measure in the polygraph. Autonomic nervous system response changes transpire when the subject tries to lie, because the lying and autonomic nervous systems are linked together. Whenever you try to lie, there are going to be some physiological changes. The physiological changes could be, there could be increase in your blood pressure, there could be increase in your heart rate, there could be increase in your galvanic skin response, that is your sweating. There can be increase in your breathing rate. There can also be increase in the micro movements of your body. So these are all the changes which are associated with lying, which we are going to check. But now there is one question. Is it a lie detector or is it a deception detector? Right? Because sometimes the person explicitly lie, sometimes the person is not saying anything, not explicitly lying about the particular fact, but they are trying to hide it. So is it lying or is it deception? So normally people call it a lie detection test, but scientifically, when you ask a person who is actually conducting, who are experts in polygraph, they always say that this is not a lie detector machine. Instead, it's a deception detector machine. It's an instrument which try to detect the deception, not the lie. We cannot directly say to the person that you are lying. We can say that you are trying to deceive us out of all the particular facts. So that is the scientific way of telling it. So it's not a lying detection, but deception detection, which we uh, detect through the physiological changes that occur in a person's body when he tries to lie. So we'll go through the history of polygraph one by one, how, when it was originated, then over the time period, what are the factors added onto it, and how it came to the form that it is today. So it started all in 1892. The polygraph instrument was in existence in its most basic design. So initially, not all the elements were included in one design. It was in its basic design as early as 1892. It was then that Sir James Mackenzie, a heart surgeon of London, England, constructed the clinical polygraph, which means till now, till 1892, it was not explicitly being used for the deception detection. It was used in the clinical setting, not intended to detecting deception in individual. He used this instrument when giving medical examinations, as it has the capability to record simultaneously undulated line tracing of the vascular pulse, which means it was checking the heart rate changes. It was checking the radial heart rate, vascular pulses, vascular pulses, and arterial by the way of metal stylus on the rotating drum of smoked paper. So all the changes that was happening in the person in the medical condition or examination, it was measuring these things and putting it on a smoked paper. So till now we have the heart rate changes wala element. In 1895, the first use of scientific instrument designed to measure physiological response for this purpose occurred in 1895 when an Italian physician, psychiatrist, and pioneer criminologist, Cesare Lombroso, who is also known as the father of criminology, modifies an existing instrument called a hydrosymphogram and uses this modified device in his experiment to measure the physiological changes that occur in a crime suspect blood pressure. So now he has added one element, which is blood pressure. Initially, it was only the pulse rate. Now he has added the blood pressure and measuring both the things simultaneously during the course of police interrogation. So initially 1892 is what it was a clinical polygraph. In 1895, it was first time that it was used for the interrogation purpose along with another element, that is your blood pressure with pulse rate. 1906, Sir James Mackenzie again refines his clinical polygraph and devises the clinical ink polygraph with the help of Lancashire watchmaker Mr. Sebastian Shaw. This improved instrument used a clockwork mechanism for the paper rolling and time maker movement, and it produces ink recordings of physiological function that are easier to acquire and to interpret. Till now, we were measuring it on the smoke paper. Now, Mackenzie has again devised it and improved it with the help of clinical ink that was black ink. Right, he added another feature that okay, these changes that are happening in the person's body while they are doing it for the medical examination or for the interrogation purpose, how do you measure the changes? Like, how are you going to put it in the physical form? You need to have some kind of physical form to actually measure what is happening. So he made the clinical ink polygraph. Although not for the purpose of detecting deception again in suspect, Mackenzie's ink polygraph is the first known instrument that contains the essential feature of the present-day instrument, and its construction is based on precisely the same principle. It is written that modern polygraph is fundamentally a modification of Dr. Mackenzie's clinical ink polygraph. So now what feature he is talking about? He is talking about the ink feature that is actually being used on paper rolling and time marker movement. Like, okay, at this particular time, this change has occurred. So there is a time maker movement, there is a paper rolling system, and there is a ink. So it is measuring its changes in the physical form. So he had added the another feature which is being used in the modern polygraph also. 1914, Italian psychologist Vittorio Bensui discovered a method for calculating the quotient of inhalation to exhalation time. So breathing pattern is also being involved. Till now we have blood pressure, we have heart rate. Now the another person has tried to measure the inhalation to exhalation time as a mean of verifying the truth and detecting deception in the subject. Using a pneumogram, a device that records a subject breathing pattern, Bensui conduct comprehensive experiments on the respiratory system of lying. So third feature is also got added to the particular instrument, which is your breathing pattern. He concludes that lying causes an emotional change within a person that result in detectable respiratory changes that are indicative of deception. So we had heart rate in first place, then Lombroso added your blood pressure, and now Bensui added your breathing pattern, breathing respiratory system changes, right? 1915, Dr. William Moulton Marston, a lawyer, a psychologist, discovers a correspondence between telling a lie and a rise in person's blood pressure. He developed the discontinuous systolic blood pressure test and invents an early form of polygraph when he built a device with the capacity to measure changes in person's blood pressure. He improved it a little bit. He added the feature of discontinuous systolic blood pressure test. Dr. Marston's technique uses a standard blood pressure cuff. So initially, when blood pressure was being used, they were using the metal staples and something. But now he has added the cuff, which is a part of modern polygraph, and the stethoscope to take intermittent systolic blood pressure reading of a suspect, which is normally how we go for the blood pressure testing. So that's the model he used of suspect during questioning for the purpose of detecting deception. Dr. Martin's discontinuous systolic blood pressure test later became one component of the modern polygraph, which is your blood pressure cuff. 1921, John A. Larson, a police officer with Berkeley Police Department with a PhD in physiology, built on the work of Dr. William Moulton Marston, developed what may consider to be the original lie detector when he adds an item of respiration rate to the blood pressure. He has added the respiration rate to it. Larson's instrument provides continuous reading of these physiological responses rather than discontinuous reading. So Moulton's model has the discontinuous reading. Rather than using the discontinuous reading, Larson has provided a continuous reading of the changes that are occurring in the physiological response of a person when he is trying to lie. Larson called his instrument a cardio-pneumopsychograph, which later became known as polygraph, a word derived from Greek language meaning many writings. Since it could read several physiological responses at the same time and record these responses on a rolling drum of smoke paper for future analysis and evaluation. So the one feature that he added was the continuous measuring. Other than that, we did not have the name polygraph. We had the name polygraph now. And rolling drum of smoke paper was the initial feature, which was in the starting only. 1892, we already had this feature. Using his polygraph, John A. Larson is the first person to continuously and simultaneously measure changes in a subject pulse rate, blood pressure, and respiratory rate during questioning. His polygraph is used extensively and with much success in the police investigation at the Berkeley Police Department. So he has used the polygraph, which means he was trying to validate this particular instrument in the investigation for the investigation purpose. This slide is of slight importance because it consists the information of the modern polygraph that we are currently working on. 1925, Leonard Keeler, who gained a first-hand experience in polygraph interrogation as a result of working with John A. Larson, who was a police inspector, works to devise a polygraph that used ink pen for recording the relative changes in blood pressure, pulse rate, and respiratory activity, thus eliminating the need of smoking the paper and having to preserve it with shellac. Because whatever the reading you are getting on the smoked paper, first of all, you have to smoke it, then you also have to preserve it for the future use, future analysis. So he eliminated these paper and used the ink pen. 1926, he again came with the new and improved lie detector enhanced version of John A. Larson's polygraph. 1938, Leonard Keeler further refined the Keeler polygraph when he adds a third physiological measuring component of the detection of deception. That is your psychogalvanometer, your galvanic response. Galvanic response are one of the major changes that occur in a person's body whenever he or she is trying to lie. That is sweating, change in your sweating pattern or perspiration. A component that measures change in subject's galvanic skin resistance during questioning. In doing so, Keeler marked the birth of polygraph as we know it today because it consists of all the elements that we are currently measuring. 1939, Leonard Keeler patented what is now understood as the prototype of modern polygraph, the Keeler polygraph. Today, Leonard Keeler is known as the father of polygraph. Though most of the pioneer work on it, most of the pioneer work on validating it, using it for the suspect interrogation and everything. But the first polygraph that consists of all the elements was given by Leonard Keeler, and hence he is known as the father of polygraph. Till now, this was the history of polygraph. Are we clear with it? Any question?
No, ma'am.
Components of modern polygraph instrument is your pneumogram, a pneumograph, cardiosphygmograph, and your galvanograph. Pneumograph, it measures your breathing pattern, respiratory rate. Cardiosymphogram, it measures your heart and blood pressure. And galvanograph, it measures your galvanic skin responses. So I'll give you the detail of each and every instrument that we use. First of all, let's move from left to right. At the very left, you can see thoracic pneumograph, right? Thoracic means these upper portion of your chest, upper region of respiratory activity monitoring. So here you have two tubes. In the tubes, it also written as upper and lower. Upper tube is known as upper tube is for the thoracic pneumograph, which means upper chest activity while you are breathing. Lower means abdominal pneumograph, your respiratory changes while you are lying or while you are trying to do some kind of deception. So you measure it from the stomach part. Okay, so these are some tubes which are tied to the person in the similar manner as it is tied to the person here. One goes over to the chest part, another goes over to the stomach part, right? Electrodermal sensors, there are two plates which are for galvanic skin responses. So here it is put on the palm, but right now what we use is we used to put it over the fingers. One is put over the index finger, other is put over to the ring finger, right? You do not put these, there are two plates for galvanic skin response, and you do not put the two plates together, right? One is put over to the index finger, other is put over to the ring finger, right? Can we, 1 second, right? Sorry, the internet connectivity lost. Okay. So galvanic skin response, index finger and ring finger, you do not put two together because first of all, it's an electrical activity. So if you put it together, then there will be some disruption in the reading itself, right? There is an infrared photoelectric plethysmograph, which measures your heart rate. Pulse, blood volume, relative change monitoring, which means your heart rate change, right? If you have put your GSR on the left hand, you put this particular instrument on the right. If you have put it GSR on the right hand, then you put it onto the left. Not all the things, not these two things cannot be put over the one hand. Simple reason, all are due to the physiological changes. Somehow some kind of electrical activity is going to be there, and it can lead to disruption if you put all the things together, right? There here, movement and motion sensor. It is for the micro movement that happens in your body when you're trying to lie, when you try to feel uncomfortable while answering a question, because it might lead to the mm, it might lead to your exposing some kind of like some kind of event, or your lying attitude, or it might lead to exposing your deception. So you tend to feel uncomfortable, you tend to change your body position to find comfort in somehow that situation. So these movement and motion sensors are put over to the chair, and over this particular sensor you sit. So there are two there are two separate movement and motion sensors for both the body part, left and right body part, right? So it is put over to the chair and on which the person sits. The next is your cardiovascular blood pressure cuff, which is put over to the right hand. It is this particular cuff is put over to the 60 pressure of 60, which finds to be normal normal for general population, and from there you check your changes that happen while you are trying to lie in the questioning session, right? Clear about the instrument?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So these instruments, these are not directly connected to the computer, right? There is another thing which acts as a channel between these instruments and your monitor screen, right? So these are going to give you the analog signals, and it is then again put over to the particular screen in the digital signals. So this is put into the amplifier or the data collector. All the instruments are connected there, and that data collector is connected to the laptop screen, and then you check the changes, right? Procedure to perform before the conduction of test. You cannot put the person directly onto the polygraph test. There is some kind of procedure that you have to follow before you conduct the test. As avertment of examiners' emotional state, examiners as well as examining. Both are important because first the person has to question, the person has to evaluate, the person has to see the minor changes as well. Second, the person who is on the particular machine, you have to check the emotional state of that particular person also. If he is able to answer or not, if he's going through overly emotional or overwhelmed emotional state, then the result might not be significant to you, because that will not show you the actual result. It will also include the emotional state. Medical fitness of the examining. So medical fitness is most important. You cannot put the person who is actually very ill, who is going through cold or fever or any other kind of uh, medical issue, then the changes is automatically be different. It will be different because if you are suffering from any kind of illness, it might happen that it has already enhanced your physiological responses. Then the responses that you are going to get from the questioning will not be valid. To identify overly responsive behavior, specialized tests to be conducted. Now there are some person who act overly other than the normal person in general life. It's in their behavior. So you also have to identify that, okay, this person acts in this particular way, this person acts in this particular way. So you have to design these questions, you have to design your baseline in such manner. To assess responsive capabilities of examinations, control questions be asked. You also have to ask the control question to the person so that you can check whether to what extent the person is comfortable lying, because somehow we have lied in our life, right? To some extent we all are comfortable in lying and we feel like, okay, this is a very small issue, so there might not be that much physiological changes in our body. So we actually have to check while we are conducting the polygraph that what is the responsive capacity of this particular person, to what extent he can lie and it will not show any physiological change, and to what extent we have to ask question to elicit these physiological changes. To do factual analysis of the case information. Factual analysis means you have to get the fact from, first of all, the investigation officer. Also, you also have to get the account of the examiner on whom you are going to conduct. So both the perspective you check. And that is how you make your questions. To do a pre-test interview and detailed review of the questions. And whatever the questions you have made, there is no limitation of the suspect cannot know the questions. Actually, you review these questions with the investigation officer as well as the suspect. So this is some of the things that needs to be keep in mind while you're conducting the test. Now, question formation. In polygraph, most important part, first of all, you should know how many questions you can ask in this particular, for example, this many questions you can ask. So among these many questions, how many questions you can ask about the crime scene or related to the crime, right? How many sets you have to ask. So these are some of the very important things that you have to keep in mind. In polygraph, in narcoanalysis, in BIOS, you can put the person on the instrument, but it will be of no use if you do not have the questioning skills. Questioning skills are most important. How do you frame the question? What kind of question you have framed? How to elicit the information by asking the questions? That is the most important thing, right? You can know how to operate the instrument, but it will be of no use if you are not getting any response, right? And how you will go get the response? If you have a very strong questioning skills, if you know how to make the question, right? Because usually polygraph may you ask 10 to 12 questions at a time, right? And in those 10 to 12 questions, only 4 to 6 questions will be related to the crime, right? So in that 4 to 6 questions, you have to ask in such a manner that you get the appropriate response, you get the response which will be an aid to the investigation, right? So how do you make these questions? That is an important thing. Questions are based on the interview with the investigation officer and the suspect being brought by the police on whom the test is going to be conducted, which is very obvious. Now there are sets of questions. You conduct 4 plus minus 2 sets of questions. For example, when you're conducting 4 are your normal 4 sets you are going to ask anyway, but you find that okay, this person might be deceiving, but it's not coming clearly, it's showing that in 3 it is, 1 it is not, then you run 2 extra sets, right? The question remains same in all the set. 10 to 12 question will remain same. You will not be able to play with the question in the set. You will be able to play with the sequence. Like you can change the sequence of the question in the set. For example, I have prepared 12 questions, right? In those 12 questions, in all my 6 set, which is 4 plus 2, I'll be able to play with the sequence. Like I can put 4th question in 1st place, 2nd question in 8th place, and anything like this. Okay, but I'll not be able to change the question. So this information that only 10 to 12 questions you can ask. In those 12 questions, you can only ask 4 to 6 questions which are relevant to the crime. You can ask 4 plus minus 2 sets. If you're not finding deception in the 4 set itself, there is no need to conduct another 2, right? But if you find like 3 are coming deceptive, 1 is not clear, then you can go ahead with conducting the all 2 sets, all 2 remaining sets, right? And there should be changing sequence of all the sets. Is it clear, Ashmita?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Types of questions now is an important aspect, right? What are the types of questions? There are relevant questions and there are irrelevant questions. A relevant question is one that deals with the real issue of concern to the investigation. For example, if it is related to robbery, the robbery related question. If it is related to murder, murder related questions. So basic questions which are actually dealing with the issue. That is your relevant questions. For example, at this particular time, at 8:30, you went to this house. This house means the house where the crime has occurred. This is a relevant question. Today is Friday. This is not a relevant question to the concern at all. So it became irrelevant. These questions indicate asking whether the examinee perpetrated the target act or know who did it, or perhaps question about particular piece of evidence that would incriminate the guilty person. So basic thing that you have to look for is if he has committed the act, if he was involved in the act, or if he knows who has committed the act. So you have to target your guilty person, and your guilty person's information can come from the witness, can come from the accomplice, can come from the guilty person itself. So you have to target these activity. An irrelevant question is one designed to provoke no emotion. Like it's asked for making the baseline. कि अगर general question we are asking, so what are the physiological response of the person? That then only you will be able to check the changes in the physiological measure. Irrelevant questions are typically placed in first position of a question list because the physiological response that follow the presentation of first questions are presumed to have no diagnostic value. We are making a baseline. They are also placed at other point in the question sequence so that you can also check the overwhelming response. You can discriminate the overwhelming response to particular question. For example, if you have put 4 to 6 questions in a line, which are relevant question, then how you are going to check? You might see all the elevated response, but then you can't pinpoint which information is particularly important or necessary to know the information of the guilty person. So you have to sequence it in such a way that you do not ask all the relevant questions in one go. That is your one questioning technique, relevant irrelevant test, which means you have put 2 irrelevant question, 1 relevant question, 3 irrelevant, 1 irrelevant question. So this is how you put the question. Is it clear? Ashmita, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes.
Now there is comparison question test, which is also known as control question test. It compares examinee response to relevant questions to their response to other questions that are believed to elicit physiological reaction from innocent examinee. Okay. So this particular test is to discriminate between the guilty person and the differentiate between the guilty person and the innocent person. The purpose of designing these questions is that it will elicit provoked emotion from the innocent person rather than the guilty person. For example, if you ask me that in a robbery, uh, suppose 25,000 rupees have been stolen from someone's purse, right? I was present there, I was presumed suspect, but I have not committed the act. So if you ask me, have you stolen 25,000? It might not provoke any kind of physiological change because I have not. But if you ask me, have I stolen something ever in my life? It will elicit some kind of response because most of the people, not everybody, I can assume, most of the people in their life at some point they have stolen something. So this general question, have you stolen anything, will elicit more response from me. There will be more physiological changes in my responses than the particular relevant question that you have asked. So it's basically to differentiate between the guilty person and innocent person with the assumption that innocent person will have more physiological changes in their measure when you ask the control question, that is your have you ever stolen anything. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Two or more important questioning technique that we use, that are mostly used in while you conduct the polygraph in a professional setting. One is concealed information test, which is also known as guilty knowledge information test. Guilty knowledge information test assume that the knowledge of the particular act, the guilty knowledge of the particular act, is either with the one who has committed the act or with the investigation officer, right? Only these two people know about this piece of information, which we call guilty knowledge, right? So for example, let's take the previous example, 25,000. I have committed the act, so I know how much money I have uh, stolen, right? Or the person whose money has been stolen, or the investigation officer. Other than these three people, nobody knows. Everybody know some money has stolen. There has been a theft, but nobody knows how much money was gone, right? Now, when the investigating officer has told this to the professional who is actually designing the question, that 25,000 has been stolen. Now, these 25,000 information with which is a technical information, which is a guilty knowledge information, is either with me, the suspect, or the person whose money has gone. So if the professional who is conducting the test on me, put the question that have you stolen 25,000? It will elicit a physiological response because this is an exact figure. This is a piece of information which is only with me, right? So this is a guilty knowledge test. It presents examinee with a set of very similar items, much in a manner of stimulation test, except the similar item include one true and several false detail of some aspect of an incident under investigation that has not been publicized, so that the true answer would be known only to the investigator and to those present at the incident. In a burglary, examinee might be asked about several possible points of entry into the house, one of which the burglar know actually used, right? So this is how you make the use of guilty knowledge, put it into the question, and check if the particular suspect is actually your criminal or not. The peak of tension test, on other hand, is similar to guilty knowledge test, only in the only difference lies in the formation of the question. It's distinct because the questions are asked in an easy recognized order, right? It's basically to build up the tension in the person. Let's take the previous example. 25,000 is an exact figure, but I starts asking you that, okay, have you stolen 12,000? Have you stolen 14,000? Have you stolen 16,000? You know the number is increasing, and that is how there is a tension buildup. The time you hear 25,000, there will be a peak of tension in your body, and it will show the maximum change in the physiological response, because you have recognized the information, and you are going to, if you are going to say yes, you have actually admitted to it, and if you say no, it will definitely show a discrepancy between your answer and the physiological change in your body. So concealed information, you ask direct question. Peak of tension test, you ask the question in the form of building the tension, where you know, okay, this figure is going to come, this figure is going to come, this figure is going to come, and then when the figure come, there will be a peak of your physiological changes. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am, got it.
So we have learned about a relevant information test. We have learned about control questioning technique. We have learned about concealed information or guilty knowledge test, and we have learned about the peak of tension test, the most important kind of test in the polygraph. We'll go for the stages of polygraph. Till now we have learned, okay, what we have to do, and questioning technique and everything. Another most important thing is you have to take the consent of the person on whom you are going to conduct the test. Even if the person has given the consent, and during the test itself he says, I do not want to continue further, you have to stop the test then and there, right? You cannot further go on to the test. And you also need to obtain the court orders for the polygraph. First of all, first thing, the polygraph has to come to you through the court only. The suspect has to come to you through the court. The court first give the order that, okay, on this particular person, polygraph has to be conducted. Second thing that happens is, even the court has order, you have to obtain the consent of the person. Most of the time, people give consent and do not oppose to the test. But if the person is not giving you the consent, you cannot go ahead with the test. Clear? Now the stages of polygraph is: first, pre-test interview. Second is actual in-test phase or the chart collection or examination proper phase. And third is your post-test interview. Pre-test interview, the first stage start when the examiner introduces himself to the subject and tell the subject about the procedure and the legal aspect of the test, the legal rights and everything. And the consent of the test is taken, and the subject is also told about his legal rights. Legal rights, simple thing that you go that you ask tell the person is that whatever you are going to say, it cannot be used as an incriminatory statement, it cannot be used as a confession to the magistrate. Instead, it will be used as a piece of information for the police officers to investigate further. So basically, it's not a confession, it's just for the investigation purpose. It cannot be used against you as a confession to the magistrate. Instead, it will be used by the police officers only. Second thing, if you do not wish to continue, you can abort the test whenever you want. People do not actually abort it because they find it beneficial to them if they are innocent, right? Or even if they are not innocent, there is a conception that because the court has ordered, and if I abort the test or if I do not give the consent, it might give me a disadvantage, and it might prove me guilty even before the court has proven me guilty. So that is one of the reasons why people consent to it. All these are written in a form which the subject signed. He is told that no question would be asked about his political affiliation, religion, or social belief or sexual activity, etc., unless it is basically related to the manner for which the test is being carried out. Obviously, if you are going to conduct a test in regards to a sexual abuse, you have to ask about the sexual activity. If you're going to conduct a test on the rights, you have to ask about the rights, political agenda, or religious, or any belief. So if it is related to the test, you are going to ask, otherwise you are not going to ask these questions. Then the examiner tell about the polygraph technique to the subject, and the queries are made from the subject in detail about the incident for which the test is conducted. The pre-test interview which we are going to ask, where we are going to collect the information on which basis we are going to make the questions. Questions are asked to know behavioral symptoms which indicate symptoms of deception. The pneumographs, sphygmomanometers, electrodes are placed on the subject during or at the conclusion of pre-test interview, and after the interview concluded, the sphygmomanometer is inflated and recording of the response begin. The box is recorded. So basically, you take the baseline of BP first, and at the same time, you take the baseline at the end of the pre-test interview, and everything the person has consented to give the consented to conduct the test. You put the person on the machine, you attach the devices, and then you go ahead with the in-test phase. Chart collection or examination proper or in-test phase. The subject is given a comfortable chair to sit, and the test is conducted in a vacant and a calm room with only examiner in it. The second thing that we have to keep in mind is that you do not decorate the place. It should be a room big enough to let two people sit and the instrument and everything, but should not be big enough for the person to run his or her imagination. It should be very calm. It should not be very decorated so that the person can distract himself or herself, right? So it should be vacant and calm room with big enough to incorporate two people, but not big enough to let the person run down his imagination, right? Question prepared in advance are put to the subject, and he has to reply to them in yes or no. The person has to physically reply. Some questions are irrelevant and some are relevant one. One of the questions is thought-provoking question. The measurement of blood pressure, respiration, pulse, and rate of breathing is recorded during the whole of the question answer series. The examiner then compare response of stress-provoked question with the other question and interpret the quote to know whether lies has been spoken or not. Right? In test phase that we have discussed previously, बिठाया जाएगा yes or no में उसको आंसर देना है. Then we compare the physiological changes between the relevant questions and irrelevant question, and then we have to interpret it to the code. There is a gap of 10 to 15 seconds between each question, so that responses to the last question may be eliminated and physiological response come closer to the baseline, right? 10 से 15 seconds का questions के बीच में gap होगा. The time if beginning of the examination question asked and when examination end, it is all recorded by the examiner in the chart. Then the subject is asked about his reaction to the question. It helps in refining the question more. Question is revised and reformed and is necessarily classified. The stimulation test is considered out. Stimulation test is designed to convince the subject about the accuracy of polygraph examination. Stimulation test you do not do in between the test. You do it before you have conducted the test, before you have actually asked the question which are related to the crime, right? Stimulation test is basically to establish the validity of the test in the suspect's mind, right? In the stimulation test, we use mostly the card test, where we ask the person to take out a card, see if this card is, for example, 6 of number, and we ask the person to deliberately lie to all the questions so that he can see, okay, you have lied, you can see the physiological changes that has occurred in your body when you have lied. So this is a kind of stimulation test which happened before, way before it. Right? We do not ask stimulation test between the tests when we are actually moving to the end of the questions. 10 to 15 second का gap होगा हर किसी के बीच में, and सारे physiological changes को you have to measure. So this is how the chart look over the screen, right? You can see the chest breathing, stomach breathing, basically 2 breathing pattern. Sweat duct activity, your galvanic skin response, your blood pressure, and somehow over the screen there is also the activity of micro movements. So your micro movements are also being checked, right? So this is how it looks over the time period. Then post-test interview occur. In third stage, the result of the test is discussed with the subject in order to analyze about deception of attempted unresponsive to the any question. For example, if the person has not responded to any question, we clarify why did you not responded. If we feel okay, the person has tried to deceive here, we see it on the result, we clarified it right then and there that your response was this. What do you think? What could be the reason your response is like this? And if he says something which you can use for the uh, as an piece of information you can give to the court, then this is well and good. So you basically at the post-test interview clarify all the results, your doubt and everything, and his or her doubt if there is any, and then the test is concluded. The test results are concluded in two manners. First, you say the deception indicated toward the relevant question. Second, you say no deception indicated toward the relevant question. Third is your inconclusive result. Inconclusive result says if the person being too unresponsive for the questions, if the person was not focused enough, and if you feel that there could be deception but it was not indicated in the result, you can say the inconclusive result also. So three are basically there: deception indicated, no deception indicated, and inconclusive. Got it? Is it clear, Ashmita? Then we go for the case
Yes,
study.
ma'am.
Okay. So there is a golden rooster case 2007. In October 2007, a large software development company located in an Asian country sought help of a polygraph investigative service to identify the perpetrator following the illegal transfer of $98,000 from an online casino system which they were upgrading. The name of the system server was Golden Rooster. So basically, while they were upgrading their system of online casino, somebody withdrawal or gave an illegal transfer of $98,000. The company's worker involved the integration of several newly developed games with an already operating online casino. A player, a member of the public, walked into one of their arcade's PC terminal and invested a few dollars to play their game. Shortly afterward, he cashed out $98,000 and disappeared without a trace. So he has invested only few dollars, played the game, withdraw this much of amount and disappear without a trace. That was little suspicious. Investigation by the company revealed that there were several illegal transactions of small amount before and after the after the $98,000 transaction. So usse pehle bhi there was small transaction that was happening in the company which was illegal. An examination of the computer log and the web payout process pointed to an inside job, which means somebody who was inside the system was actually behind this particular act, probably in collision with the outsider, although the culprit had tried to make it look like an external break-in or a programming error. A detailed examination of the internal computer log failed to identify the culprit. Although the amount money was lost was relatively small in relation to the multi-million dollar project, the company was worried about its reputation. As there were subcontractors involved in the project, there was also the question as to who was to return the missing 98,000 to the casino operator. All the IT specialists involved in the project, a total of 15 software engineers volunteered for the polygraph test. Polygraph test on the 15 software engineer conducted eventually identified the culprit to be the system administrator who had intimate technical knowledge of the system and the casino operation. So insider's job was there. Definitely. Who was involved? After the polygraph, it was concluded the system administrator was involved. He also had the technical knowledge and he also had the casino operation knowledge. When confronted with the test result, this employee agreed to pay back the money. The company eventually fired this employee and the company's reputation was saved through polygraph. This was one of the case history where polygraph was conducted internationally. In Indian context, I could not find the particular thing, basically the case study, but there are several cases where polygraph has been conducted, like Aroshi murder case, recent Sushant Rajput case. Then there was a Selvi, state of Karnataka versus Selvi case. So there are several cases where polygraph has been conducted and where the result has shown some kind of important piece of information as well. So here we are finished with polygraph. Any question, Ashmita?
No, ma'am.
Are you clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We'll take 2 minutes break and then we'll start with narco.
Okay.
Thank you, Shonam.
No problem, sir. Is it okay?
Yeah, this is nice. And you have covered the case studies also. This is nice.
Thank you, sir.
So now I am closing the YouTube video. And next, when you start the narco analysis, then again we can start, okay? Okay, Shonam.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you make me host.
I have, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, Ashmita.
Yeah, ma'am. The TAT cards that you sent us, the PDF,
Yes.
mailed us. That is the Uma Chaudhary's Indian adaptation version.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Sir, we can start. Roy, sir, we can start with narco.
Okay, okay, sure. So now you are host, so you can continue.
Okay. Okay. So we'll start with narco test, right? Let's go with the origin first. The term narcoanalysis, it's derived from the Greek word narke, which means anesthesia. Anesthesia in normal terms, which we are actually going to use while we are conducting the narcoanalysis, is used to describe a technique of diagnosing and giving the psychotherapy with the help of psychotropic drugs as central nervous system depressant, and by the virtue this they produce a wide spectrum of effect. So basically what we are going to do here, initially narcoanalysis, they were only using it for the clinical purpose as a mean of psychotherapy to treat the people who were suffering from psychological disorder, right? A kind of psychotherapy which is conducted on a person by bringing that individual into a semi-sleep stage with the help of scientific drugs, right? So the term itself means the narke, which is a anesthesia, a type of drug. So we use these drugs to put the person into a semi-sleep stage. The most common drug used to bring into play the narcoanalysis are sodium amytal, which we normally known as amylobarbital, or sodium pentothal, commonly known as thiopental or thiopentone, is used by psychiatrists on the particular subject to put the person into a semi-sleep stage. The subject's self-consciousness is allowed to sink down by making intrusion to his nervous system, which means consciousness is given a backside and the person is allowed to be free. In such a state, an attempt is made to extract information in form of clues about the crime, as under the influence of drug, it becomes extremely difficult for the subject to lie. When there is a disinhibition in the person's body and the person is feeling relaxed, disinhibited under the influence of drug, it becomes extremely difficult for him to actually generate the lie. So whatever the information he has already stored in his brain, he tends to lose down on that information and it is being given to the particular person who is asking the questions, and the information is elicited in this particular manner. It is a process whereby a subject is put to sleep, not asleep, but a half consciousness by means of doses of the scientific drug. What are the drugs? Your sodium amytal, barbiturate, or sodium pentothal, and then interrogate while in a revire, which means a semi-conscious stage, right? Let's go to a little bit of history of narcoanalysis. The word narcoanalysis has its origin in 20th century. Horsley coined the term narcoanalysis, right, which means analysis of the knowledge of the individual in drug-induced condition. We have to analyze the information or knowledge of the individual when he is in a drug-induced condition. Narcoanalysis for the first time gained the popularity in year 1922 when Robert House, who was an obstetrician in Texas, used the drug scopolamine on two prisoners whose guilt appeared clearly confirmed, right? So Robert House, who was a doctor by profession, he used the drug scopolamine on two prisoners, and these two prisoners were the prisoners whose guilt was already confirmed, right? They appeared to have committed the act. It was not confirmed, but they appeared to have committed the act. He arranged the interrogation of two prisoners in Dallas Country Jail with the assistance of drug called scopolamine. Under the test, both denied the crime for which they have been detained, and upon trial they were found innocent. So for the first attempt, it was appeared to be a good success for narcoanalysis because both the people have denied the claim that they have committed the act and they were proven innocent when the judgment came in the trial round. Subsequent to the successful experimentation, it was concluded by the House that subject cannot lie in a sleep-like state under the effect of scopolamine. It is only after this experiment that the phrase of truth serum came into limelight. The truth serum is a name given to hypnotic drug that induce a person to speak the truth. The success of this experiment gave Robert House recognition as the father of truth serum. Who has coined the term? Horsley has coined the term narcoanalysis. Who has given the truth serum? Who is the father of truth serum? Dr. Robert House is the father of truth serum. Who has actually first conducted the narcoanalysis on the prisoner? Dr. Robert House conducted the particular test as a mean of interrogation in the prisoners. Are we clear?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll move on. V.J. Beckwin in 1930 first introduced the use of amytal for the treatment of producing narcoanalysis for neuropsychiatric disorder, not for the purpose of investigation, but neuropsychiatric disorder. According to his definition of narcosis, is a drug-induced state of deep sleep, which is similar to general anesthesia, but was not so profound, right? So what he said that these narcosis is creating a deep sleep-like state, which is similar to general anesthesia. Like when a person goes to the operation, anesthesia is given to the person to put him into the sleep-like state. But this is not a deep sleep-like state like it was in the general anesthesia. That is not so profound. The person does not actually sleep, but a sleep-like state is induced. So the person is semi-awake and semi-sleep. The patients of Beckman were excited for long period and were susceptible to physical exhaustion. Excited for long period means these were the person who were in their hyperactive state, and because of their hyperactive state, because of their continuous excitement, they were more prone to uh, suffer any physical exhaustion, which might pose the threat to pneumonia or cardiac arrest in them. Hence, it was necessary to produce narcosis in them, which means a sleep-like state in them to relax them. Other drugs and agents were not that much effective as was amitriptyline. Hence, it produces a great effect on the patients, which produce rest and sleep. That is why he used the amitriptyline. He was here trying to validate the use of amitriptyline over any other psychotropic drug. In 1932, Erich Lindemann tested his hypothesis that sleep could not be the only healing factor in psychiatric patients. He gave such doses of amitriptyline to his patient, which were less than the doses of for producing the sleep. So he gave a little less amount of dosage. He found that a desire to communicate, a willingness to speak about very personal problems, an anticipation of future pleasant activities, and feeling of relief and freedom developed in normal individual. When the person is given that particular space where he can speak about the problem, speak about what is going inside him, he he became relieved, and he is more into the peaceful state. So that is why he gave a little less doses of the amitriptyline and let the person speak of their own problem in a semi sleep like state. Otherwise the person would not have given the particular account of what they are going through, what is their feeling. But in their sleep-like state, they gave the account. And that is how the idea or the theory behind narcoanalysis being used in the investigation came into existence. If the person who was suffering from psychological disorder, suffering from any kind of distress, could have talked about their problem in a semi-sleep-like state, it can also be used on the suspect to elicit information in semi-sleep-like state, because they have also been suffered because of the information. All the people are keep asking them about what happened, what happened, what happened. So why can't we elicit that particular information for the use of investigation as well? That was the theory behind Enrich Lindemann test, right? So this was a general history. It was much more prominent in World War II. The narco-analysis were more conducted on war people to elicit what has they gone through, or over the prisoners about what they were plotting and everything. So narco-analysis was much more prominent during the World War II. Now, what is truth serum? Robert House was the father of truth serum. He gave the use of sodium, he gave the use of scopolamine. But currently what we are using as a truth serum is, first of all, the doses of truth serum depend on the suspect age, sex, health, physical and mental condition. The doses for male will not be similar to the doses for female, right? Or the older people. Age became a very important factor. The dose you use on a 35-year-old will not be used for a 55-year-old. It will also depend on the health. If a person is in good health, he will require more doses. If a person is in a little bit of less physical health or mental health, he will require the doses as per his or her health. It is already being assessed by the physician, and physician and aesthetician, and they decide what kind of dose has to given to the particular person. Normally, 3 grams of any truth serum, the drug, barbiturate or sodium pentothal, is dissolved in 300 ml of distilled water. 3 gram to 300 milliliter of distilled water, and then it is injected to the subject intravenously. By this, subject imagination is neutralized and he is not in the position to manipulate things but can only answer specific simple questions. The truth serum, it is administered intravenously along with 10% of dextrose on interval of 3 hours to the suspect accused. So basically 3 grams of truth serum. What is truth serum? Barbiturate or sodium pentothal is involved in 300 ml distilled water, which is injected along with 10% of dextrose on the interval of 3 hours intravenously. Is it clear? Very technical information, but simple at the same time.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Procedure for the narco analysis test. First procedure is the physical checkup of the person. If the person is not physically or mentally fit to take the narco analysis, you do not give the narco analysis bit, because first of all, narco analysis is invasive. Second, it involves the uses of drug. Third, if do not administer properly, it could lead to medical complication and even to the death. So physical checkup of the person is most important. The truth serum doses. After physical checkup, the truth serum doses has to be specifically mentioned by the physician. Record of the test. The test is recorded in all the form: videograph, tape recorder. It's also written in the. It's also recorded in the written form. So it has to be recorded in all the ways possible. Doses of the truth serum. Presence of authorities. Who all has to be present in the room while narco analysis test is conducted are physician, neurologist, cardiologist, anesthetist, and the lawyer, right? These 5 people has to be there along with the person who is conducting the test and the person on whom the test is being conducted. Precautions and guidelines we have to look for before we conduct the test actually, right? It should be in a well-lit room. Why you need a well-lit room? Because you need to see the person on whom you are going to inject the doses and to see the changes, right? It should be a well-lit room. Prior consent of the subject is of most importance, right? The suspect, obviously the order of conducting the narco analysis comes from the court, only then you can conduct. Second thing, if the person does not give the consent, you're not going to conduct, right? So consent of the subject along with the court order is most important. The physical and emotional implication along with the legal implication of the test should be explained to the subject by the lawyer assessing him or her. So the lawyer along with the examiner has to give the person an account of physical and emotional implication as well as the legal implication. Not be a confessional statement as was given in the polygraph. It is also here in narco that it's not a confession statement. It's just a piece of information which is going to aid to the investigation purpose, right? The interview should not exceed 1 hour of time. The suspect is not given food 5 to 6 hours before proceeding the test, and alcohol containing food and medicine should be avoided. So 5-6 hours ka fasting and no alcohol and no medicines which contain alcohol or any kind of such stuff should be avoided. The suspect must always be attended by physician, psychiatrist from the time the injection until the initial narcosis wore off. So जब से कंडक्ट करना शुरू करा है और तब जब तक वो पूरा सेमी स्लीप स्टेज खत्म नहीं हो गया तब तक physician and psychiatrist has to be there. Process of narco analysis, how it is conducted. So narco analysis test is carried out by an expert GABA, which is a neurotransmitter inhibitor, which inhibit your actions, right? So for example, I am trying to say something, but I feel like no, it might put me into danger, so I need to stop myself. So the stopping purpose is of this GABA. So it's a neurotransmitter inhibitor. Is a chemical that occurs naturally in the body. truth drug bind GABA, forming a complex at B site. So when we are giving our drug, which is a truth serum, this truth serum binds with GABA, make a complex, another compound at particular site, and exert pressure over the permeability of chloride ion into the neural membrane, right? So it increased the permeability of chloride ions into the neural membrane, leading to the stage of disinhibition. तो अभी तक जो गावा अपने को inhibit करके रखा था, जो अपने एक्शंस को इनहिबिट करा था, अभी बिकॉज क्लोराइड आयन का परमेबिलिटी ज्यादा हो गया है, तो वो डिसइनहिबिट कर देगा, वो एक्शन में डिसइनहिबिट हो जाएगा एंड इंक्रीज द एक्शन ऑफ गाबा इन द ब्रेन, thereby decreasing nerve activity in the brain, which result in the sleepiness. ठीक है, अभी गाबा की एक्टिविटी डिक्रीज हो जाएगी, डिसइनहिबिशन नेचर इंक्रीज हो जाएगा, which will decrease the nerve activity and increase the state of sleepiness. The drug depresses central nervous system and make the heartbeat slower, and blood pressure also lowers down. When the person's speech becomes slurred and or he or she behave in a cooperative manner. Now you have injected the drug, right? But how do you know when to start? When the person is in a cooperative state, when his speech has become slurred, when his body have become relaxed and not out of control but has become relaxed, then you know, okay, we can now start. The person have become more talkative, he or she is under the full control of the patient. The examiner satisfy himself by testing the subject eyes muscles with his finger. So you also check the movement of eyes with your fingers and the movement of muscles. Needles is left in the vein of the subject, as different person need different dosage of the drug, and also for continued narcotic state further administration of the drug is necessary. एक बार में सारा ड्रग नहीं डालते, ठीक है? That will be very much dangerous for the particular person, that might kill the person. So you do not put the drug in one go, you put it in the intervals, right? Care is taken that only so much drug is administered which may keep the subject in semi-awake state and does not go in deep sleep state. In this hypnotic state, the questions are asked and answered are audio and video recorded. So इस वाली state पे we ask our questions. We start from every question is asked in a sequence manner, right? शुरू से अब तक उस दिन पे क्या हुआ था, हाउ डिड यू परफॉर्म, व्हाट डिड यू डू, आपके साथ क्या हुआ, आपने क्या किया, यू हैव टू आस्क इन अ सीक्वेंस मैनर, बिकॉज आवर ब्रेन एक्चुअली स्टोर मेमोरीज इन अ सीक्वेंस मैनर, राइट? सो इफ यू आस्क इट properly, you will get the result accurately and will get more fruitful results. नार्को एनालिसिस का यूज क्या होता है? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल फॉर मेडिकल पर्पस. अभी आपने ने देखा प्रोसेस के बाद क्या होता है, you have your test is conducted, right? You have asked the question, the person has given the responses. After that, when you have stopped injecting the drug, you have completed the purpose, you are assisted, the person suspect is assisted by the physician and psychiatrist for 5 to 6 hours. He is led to sleep, he is not given any more drug, he is led to sleep, and till the time he wakes up, you have administered everything, you have checked you have given a physical checkup to the particular person, then only the person is asked to go, or the police officer take the person, right? So 5 to 6 hours of rest is also given to the person after the administration. It's not like you have administered the test and the person is asked to leave. You do not do it. You give the person 5 to 6 hours rest, then there is a physical checkup to check if there is any complication, all the things are clear, and then only you ask the person to go, right? Now uses क्या होता है? For medical purpose के लिए use होगा एक तो, for restoring speech to mute person, in case of amnesia for reviving memory, and for expression of suppressed and repressed thoughts or conflict. Psychotherapy की तरह use होता है medical purpose में. Criminal investigation में, in criminal justice system, it is used for investigation purpose. Narco-analysis test should be used only in case where large interest of society is involved. It's not like you conduct narco-analysis test on each and every person. Narco analysis is usually used in case of terrorism, crime that are well organized, serial killing, in case where no evidence is available, etc. So you do not conduct narco analysis on each and every criminal you find in jail or the person or the police officer brought to you. You conducted on very specific cases where first of all dead end, second terrorism हो, serial crime हो, crime or बहुत organized हो. So in those cases, you conduct the narco analysis and the court gives the order to conduct the narco analysis. Right. So this is a case study, very widely known case study, the Arushi murder case 2008. I'm giving you a little bit of glance of it, and I have pasted the link of YouTube video where you can actually go and see how narco analysis test was conducted on one of the suspects. So Arushi was a student who was studying in I guess 9th standard, and one day her parents found her dead. Like her parents found her body in her room, and they were suspected that okay, they have suspected the house help that they have committed the murder, right? So in that particular case, all the people were suspected. Initially, they suspected one person who was again found dead after one day over the terrace of their house, right? And then after that, even the parents of the victim was suspected. So out of those suspects, their two house help, they opted for narco analysis. Court gave the order, narco analysis was conducted, and in the narco analysis, they were found innocent. And after some time, even the court found them innocent and left them of any sentence that they were serving. So that was the case glimpse. You can also see it on the YouTube link that I have provided, that okay, on this particular case, how they conducted the narco analysis. Is it good? Everything clear? Ashmita, everything clear?
Yes, ma'am. There was a issue with the Zoom. But yeah, clear till now.
Any question? Any questions are there?
No, ma'am.
I'll mail it to you, and then you can check on YouTube how the narco analysis was done, right? Okay, so now your syllabus is completed from my side. Everything is covered. If you find any difficulty, you can mail it to me or text me. I'll always be there.
Sure thing, ma'am.
Roy sir, we are done with the class.
Last class I have missed this Arushi murder case.
Yes, sir. So you are asking about the case?
Yeah, the case study, Arushi case, Arushi murder case.
So what I have done is, because in Indian cases, I've not found much of the content. There are cases, but there are judgments only, not the content on how the test was conducted, what were the results. So they have not revealed the result as such. So I've given the glimpse. I've given the glimpse what happened in Arushi case and who opted for narco analysis. I've also pasted a YouTube link where you can actually see on the real suspect of Arushi murder case how the narco analysis test was conducted and what were the responses he gave and what was the conclusion of narco analysis.
Okay. So how forensic psychologists are important here, the role of forensic psychologists?
So they are the actually scientific officer who are going to conduct the test. So physician is not going to ask, esthetician is not going to ask, lawyer is not going to ask. We are the one who are actually going to make the questions, going to see the changes, and going to record the responses.
Oh, that means they are designing the questions.
Yes, we are actually conducting the test from the starting. So the designing part also involved in it.
Because in the narcoanalysis, I find the injection is there. So the
Yes,
psychologists,
so-
they cannot give the injection,
No,
or
no.
they can give.
No, they are not. So there are a team of 5 to 6 people
Acha,
which
okay.
needs to be there. Esthetician
Yeah.
needs to be there throughout the time when the scientific officer, which is a forensic psychologist, going to conduct the test.
Acha. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, Ashmita.
Good night.